It's free, yet priceless. You can't own it, but you can use it. You can't keep it, but you can spend it. And once you've lost it, you can never get it back. Some of you may already know what I'm referring to, but for those who don't, it's time. Everything around us seems to revolve around time. My whole life is based off timing, and not even my own timing, my parents' timing. To their luck, they had me a mere 18 years ago. And at that time, I didn't even have a concept of time. Every second, minute, hour, day seemed like the longest thing ever. Except for the minutes that involved nap time. Because as my entire family can reassure you, I loved naps. I took one every day until about the 7th grade. And let me tell you, it's been all downhill from there. I mean, who doesn't love naps? You wake up feeling refreshed, rejuvenated, alert, and not to mention super stressed out because somehow your 30-minute nap turned into 3 hours and now you have a million things to do and so little time to do them. This has been the story of my life ever since 7th grade, as I no longer have time for naps. I barely have time for a regular 8 hours of sleep. Back to the timing of my life, though. Me being born when I was led me to where I am today. I'm a senior at the Oakridge School in Arlington, Texas, speaking to all of you on a stage about time. It's crazy for me to think that if my parents hadn't met when they did, and if I hadn't been born when I was, all of those facts would likely be different. The bad part about time? You can't stop it. No amount of power in the world can stop time. It's arbitrary, yet oh so important. I thought the first 3 years of high school were bad, having to get to school at 8:30 and not leaving until 6 or 8, depending on if I had cheer that day. Little did I know that senior year would be worse, as I have the same schedule, yet need even more time to constantly fight myself over wanting to be in the moment and worrying about where I'm going to spend the next 4 years of my life. 4 years may not seem like a long time, but for me, 4 years, when it's over, will be 20% of my life that far. And the constant worry of that 20% not meeting up to the first 80% is absolutely dreadful. If you added up the amount of time I've spent at this very school, it would be about 2,520 days. I have legitimately spent 40% of all of the days of my life here. And that may seem like a lot to some of you, but for me, I wish I had that safety net of being where it's familiar and I can see my best friends every day. Soon, I will undoubtedly have to go to college and make huge life decisions like, can I wash this shirt or do I need to take it to the dry cleaners? But really, the decisions I make when I leave here will truly be life-changing, like choosing a major. I think I know what I'm interested in, but do I really know? I don't know. Only time can tell that one, as always. As some of you may know, I was fortunate enough to get to spend my winter break with 3 of my favorite people in New York. It truly was a trip of a lifetime. We did some pretty cool stuff, don't get me wrong. But the best part of the trip was getting to spend 7 days around the clock with my best friends. And if you've met the people I'm talking about, then you know they have some pretty, extravagant personalities. Needless to say, we got some pretty weird looks as Delaney broke out into song on the subway and on the streets and in every restaurant we went to and pretty much anywhere we were. I, on the other hand, have a much more controlling personality. Pre-vacation, I made reservations for dinner every night and planned what we were going to do every day just to make sure we could fit it all in. Because, as I've already said, time is limited, especially on vacation. But the first day we got there, my friends didn't want to do any of the things that I had planned. And now don't get me wrong, this was really annoying at the time. Like, hello, I spent all this time and effort planning out what we're going to do, and now y'all don't even want to do it? But being the first day of the trip, I didn't want to express my annoyance, so I kept it to myself. And after keeping it to myself, I sort of had a change of heart. That day, we went on a tour through Central Park. And after that, we went and saw Matilda on Broadway. After Matilda, we went to a pizza place that was in some kind of old church and had the best cheesecake I've ever eaten. And when we were leaving the restaurant, it actually started snowing. And I know what you're thinking. It's winter, it's New York. Why is that shocking? Well, it was shocking because it was actually colder in Texas on that day than in New York. This unplanned day turned out to be wonderful and my favorite day of the whole trip. That night, I realized that not everything great is perfectly timed and planned out. Some of the best days of your life can happen just out of the blue. So for the rest of the trip, I decided to lay back and let my friends decide everything we would do because it was easier for me not to have to control things. Except for the GPS and the subway map, because I swear all of my friends are 100% directionally challenged. The second to the last night of the trip was New Year's Eve, and it's been on all 4 of our bucket lists for I don't know how long to watch the ball drop in Times Square. So all week we were asking people, what's it like? Have you ever done it? Any advice? The most popular answer was, no, I haven't done it. And the most popular advice, if they had done it, don't do it. It's better on TV, I promise. So these answers weren't exactly what we were looking for, but we were still motivated to go. We got to Times Square around 7 hours until ball drop, and we found an entrance with a huge mass of people. And so we got in line by just walking up to this mass. Soon, though, this mass of people turned into sardines. I'm not kidding you. You couldn't move, you couldn't lift an arm, you couldn't turn around, and you were pressed up on all these people you didn't know, and it just wasn't a pleasant experience. Finally, though, we got in. And once we got in, we were ecstatic. We sprinted as far as we could, screaming about how happy we were. And then the real rough part came. Standing in a crate, more like cattle this time. Waiting, and waiting, and waiting. And after all this waiting, it was 7:30. Did you know that people stand in Times Square so long that they actually wear diapers because there's no bathrooms there? I mean, I'm not saying we wore diapers, but we did. But we didn't use them, I promise. It was just a precaution. We were all thinking, how in the world are we going to stand here for the next 4.5 hours? Needless to say, in about 30 minutes, we gave up. We just couldn't do it. You can't eat, you can't move, you can't see any of the action. It's definitely not like what they show you on TV. So we decided to go back to our hotel room and eat pizza. We were all really discouraged though, so we were going to go to Coney Island because people had been talking about some spectacular thing going on there. But once we got in the taxi driver told us it was going to be an 1.5-hour drive. So we ex-nayed that idea, and we decided to man up and go back to Times Square. We ended up sprinting around New York for about 1.5 hours. We looked like idiots. But somehow, Madeline guilted a cop into letting us in, even though we said we probably couldn't see anything because we were so far back. But we didn't care. We were just as ecstatic now as before. We got to a spot where we could see the ball, which wasn't much more than a tiny speck in the sky, as you can see in that picture where you can barely see it. And we waited 30 more minutes for that tiny little sucker to fall for 60 seconds. And now I know what you're thinking. We went through all that trouble, wasted all that time, just to watch a ball drop for 60 tiny seconds. It sounds idiotic when you really think about it, but for me and my friends, it's a memory we will never forget. I can't tell you how many times I've told this story of New Year's Eve because although it wasn't the most pleasant experience at the time, it's a story I love telling because I don't know anybody who has one like it. Time really is of the essence, and whether you've got a midnight deadline of the ball dropping or no deadline at all, you should never waste your time by sitting around. Every moment you have is precious. You can't go back and re-get that time. It can't be repeated. So you absolutely have to make the most of each and every day. Now, I know this sounds cliched, but truly, nobody remembers the time they spent at home watching TV alone, or studying for a test, or even taking a nap, no matter how great naps are. They remember the time they spent in New York with their best friends. They remember the time they let a stingray eat squid from between their toes in the Bahamas. And they remember the time that they spent sitting around countless bonfires with their best friends since pre-K, talking about who knows what. Or at least for me, those are some of the memories I've cherished most thus far. So seriously, spend your time wisely and live in the moment, because you won't always have the time or the ability to do the things you love with the ones you love. Time is a created thing, and to say, I don't have time, is like saying, I don't want to. Thank you.